Welcome to another Chosen Ones live video. They will never be the same without you. You know, narcissists and toxic people, they have an inflated sense of pride and a fragile ego. So they act like they don't really need you, as though you don't really matter to them. And then meanwhile, they're leeching off your energy and resources. They're taking everything from you. And this may sound quite confusing because maybe you're looking on their social media and you see that they're moving on now. And they may appear to be so much happier without you. They may appear to be doing well now. But there's a problem with that, because if they can so easily move on, then why did they go through all of that effort to manipulate you, to trick and deceive you? And not only that, but why, when you didn't give in, did they start devaluing you and they started throwing their rage fits, their little temper tantrums? What was the purpose of all of that? If they didn't really need you, if they're fine without you, and maybe some of you may have gotten into it with them. You may have gotten angry at them. Maybe you didn't like it when they were withholding things from you, or when they were giving you the silent treatment. But that's different, because remember, you were manipulated. You were deceived. You were trauma bonded to this narcissist or toxic person. So you didn't really need anything from them. And they knew that. That's why they manipulated you. That's why they gave you a false character. That's why they sold you a dream. That's why they trauma bonded you, to keep you under their control. Because they knew that you didn't actually need them. And initially, maybe you weren't actually too bothered about them, until they targeted your self-esteem and they exaggerated their own abilities, worth, and self-importance. And then you started to think they were something. Then you started to think that you needed something from them, especially after they had taken so much from you. But before that, you weren't really that interested in them. They had to manipulate you. They had to put on a show for you. They had to future fake. They had to string you along into something that you didn't really want to be a part of. And that's why many of them may have just played the victim with you, and you felt sorry for them. And then you decided to give them a chance. And they did that for a reason, because they knew that otherwise you weren't going to be interested in them. They had to play on your empathy, or they had to make you think that they had something when really they didn't. And that's how you're actually going to be fine without them. Now, initially, it may not feel that way, because you may still be trauma bonded. You haven't healed yet. Because that's really what this is. It's just that you're wounded. They've wounded you, they've harmed you. And now you're seeking validation or support from them, from your abuser, from the person who harmed you, who is never going to be able to give anything to you, because they only targeted you to get what they wanted from you. So they're never going to be that for you. They targeted you because you were that for them. But yeah, you will move on. You'll be fine without them, because you never needed them. They never gave anything to you for you to be dependent on. I mean, if you really look at it, you were just holding on to their lies, manipulations, and future faking. Other than that, all you got was abuse. So you're going to be fine without that. You're going to be fine without being harmed, without being psychologically manipulated. Whereas for them, they weren't being manipulated. They weren't being deceived. You brought your authentic self to them. You brought real value, things that they needed, things that they were dependent on. Your attention, validation, money, a place to stay, or other resources. And you were also their doormat, their emotional punching bag, their emotional tampon. You were all of these things for them. And it's going to be very difficult for them to find a person with those combination of traits ever again. Someone who is powerful, successful, attractive, and willing and able to put up with all of that abuse and disrespect while still remaining empathic. That is extremely rare, because most successful or attractive people are narcissistic, and they're not going to put up with anything. They're not going to tolerate anything from that narcissist or toxic person. They're definitely not going to be feeling any empathy, pity, sympathy, or compassion towards them. They're not going to be doing any of that. But that's what you were doing for them. You were always there for them. You always listened to them. And in very specific ways that no one else will be able to replicate. No one else will be able to be that type of supply to them. And even then, I mean, the odds of them finding another empath, it's just extremely rare. Only 1 to 2% of the world's population are empaths. And then to find one who is successful, attractive, and maybe one who doesn't have very strong, rigid boundaries. And that's why when they were with you, they went through such effort to manipulate you, to keep you under control, to devalue you, to target your self-esteem. And they just completely drained you. They took as much as they could from you, because they never knew when they were going to get that opportunity again. So when they saw you, they just couldn't hold back. They were all over you. They just couldn't resist it. And that's why I say that they're never going to be the same after you, after losing you. Because you gave them something that they will never find again. Something that they didn't really appreciate at the time. Because they can never be satisfied. No matter what you give to them, it's never enough. But that doesn't mean that they're not going to feel that loss without you there. That frustration, that dissatisfaction. Because you gave them something and they were hooked on it like a drug. They couldn't get enough of it. And that's why when you try to leave, they do not respond well to that. They do not respond well to you wanting to leave them. And not only because they fear rejection, abandonment, and exposure, but also it's that loss of supply. That loss of attention, validation, recognition, money, resources, and sometimes even sex. And here's the thing. They could get those things from pretty much anyone. Most people have the ability to provide that. But it's not going to be the same as what it was with you. And they know that. It's not going to be that potent, that powerful. That's why they hold on to you so strongly. That's why they put so much effort into the manipulation, the deception, the control. Because otherwise, what's the point? If it's not worth anything, if it has no importance, then why bother? What they did with you is essentially is what they do with those trucks, whatever they're called, the ones that carry lots of money to and from the banks. Those trucks are very strong. It has a lot of security. And even the person who carries the briefcase of money has a helmet, and they have surveillance cameras on it to protect it. And it's the same as what they did with you. They contained you. They contained your supply. They didn't want it to get away. They did everything they could to secure you. Because they were getting a lot of value from you. They were getting a lot out of that. And they didn't ever want it to slip away. And yeah, you may wonder, so if you were that valuable, that important to them, then why did they devalue you? Why did they put you down? But they had to do that as a means to control you. Because otherwise, if you knew your worth, then why would you stick around? Because once you know your worth, you know that you're deserving of so much more that they are not able to provide. They were hooked on you like a drug. And it was such a powerful drug to them. Something that they will never be able to find again. All they can do is just look for you in someone else and just try and turn that person into you. And that's why when you see them with a new supply, it's like they're doing everything that you wanted, or that you thought you wanted at the time. And it's because they're just trying to replicate it with someone else. They don't know what else to do. That's really just the power of your authenticity, of being genuine. A genuine person who puts it all on the line, who's willing to give it all. That is the most powerful supply, especially for a narcissist or toxic person. That's exactly what they want. You are exactly what they wanted. But they will never be able to find that again. They will never find that in anyone else. And so the best that they can do is to just live in this delusion, pretending like they've got it, when really they don't. They could just go off and try and turn some other person into you, but they're never going to be you. And sometimes, as you may have noticed, they take bits and pieces from you. They try to become you. Even though you may be of the opposite sex, they still try to take on your characteristics, your traits, your ways of being and behaving. They still try to take that on. But this is all just going on in their minds. They're not what they're portraying themselves to be. And when they first targeted you, they came with these bits and pieces that they took from the people before you. And then you eventually realized that it was all a lie, that wasn't really them. And then you ended up being disappointed, dissatisfied with that. Because these people, they're living in a delusion. They're so fake, and they have to wear these masks to manipulate people, but also they're gaslighting themselves. They think they're so much greater than what they are. They think they're something they're not. And they manipulate you, they lie to you, future fake, trauma bond you just to convince themselves. To convince themselves that there's something. Many of you, when you're looking at it as an observer, it looks like they just magically changed overnight. Like some kind of miracle. It looks like whatever problems they had just suddenly disappeared. And now everything's fine. Now they've just moved on. It looks that way. Because that's how they wanted to look to you, to the new supply, and to themselves. So that's why it looks that way. But everything is not as it seems. There is more than meets the eye. And that's why you got involved with them. How did it make you feel? Did you get what you wanted? Were you happy with them? Did you feel like it was worth it? And if not, then you know what you're dealing with. And although they may have gotten more than what they bargained for, it's not worth it for them either. Because manipulating and exploiting people, robbing them, harming them, doing all these things to them, that has an effect on them too. It harms them. And in fact, it harms them far more than it could ever have harmed you. And not only that, but for you, you'll be able to move on. They won't be able to do that. They're going to remain stuck. They're going to be longing and yearning for your supply, wishing that they could get you back, wishing that they could have that feeling, that thrill, that dopamine hit again. But many of you, your self-esteem was targeted, you were devalued, discarded, trauma bonded, triangulated. You've been brainwashed, so it's difficult for you to see it that way. It looks like they just came in and you were the problem, they were dissatisfied. And then they just left and found someone better, and now they're so much happier. And now you're all alone and you're miserable. Yeah, it looks that way because you've been indoctrinated for such a long time. So you're not seeing what's actually happening. Once you come out of the fog, you begin to see it for what it is. That these are miserable people who can never be satisfied. And they had nothing to bring to you other than lies of future faking. But your supply was probably the best that they ever had. And they're never going to find that again. They are going to be miserable without you. They're never going to be the same again. And they're never going to be the same because they're not going to find that ever again. They're not going to have that feeling again. That rush. But as for you, initially you may feel like you're never going to find anything like that again. And really, it seems that it's more difficult to find someone who's not like them these days because they're that common. They all act like they're so special and unique, but they're really not. You can find people like this everywhere you go. And you never actually wanted them anyway. You were just trauma bonded. If you look back, before you got involved with them, you were looking for something. You were looking for something that they're not, that they never brought to you, that you never saw in them. And yet, because they manipulated you, you just ended up going along with it. Because they future faked you as well, so you thought at some point things were going to change. But they never did. They were never what you thought they were. They were never what they portrayed themselves to be. And the only reason why you may be holding on, wishing that they would come back, is because you still believe in their lies. You still believe in the false character. And that's the only reason why. But as for them, they actually had something with you. They had something of real value. They took it for granted, they didn't appreciate it at the time. But they're going to be missing it now. When they go out into the world, and because initially while they were with you, they thought just because they got you, maybe they could go out and find something better and put that into their control. But it never works out that way. It never works out that way. They're not just going to go out there and find someone with your qualities, your characteristics. They're not just going to go out there and find someone like that and have them under their control. It's not going to work that way. Yeah, they had that with you, but they got lucky. They were very lucky to find you. Because as I said, empaths, they're only 1 to 2% of the world's population. That makes them very rare. So they're more likely to run into another narcissist, another toxic person, and to find someone who's so loving, kind, and empathic. And the older that they get, the more bitter, resentful that they become. They do not age well. Their stress continues to grow, and they've got no one there to relieve their pain, to be a good source of supply, because I can't find anyone else like you ever again. So gradually the tables turn. You age well, things get better for you. And they just end up becoming even more miserable and resentful. They typically come back to you, they hold on to you, they stalk you, they try to sabotage you. Does any of this sound like things that a happy person would do? Someone who's moved on? Someone who's got a better situation without you? Of course not. And that's why in the end, so is you. You're the one who's trying to move on. You're the one who's doing better without them. And that's why they end up being the ones who are chasing after you. Unless, of course, you've got strong boundaries, you've got a support network, move far away from them, change your number, deleted your social media, and they're not going to be chasing after you because they can't. But honestly, this is just how it goes for them. It turns out this way for them every time. I've never heard of any situation where a narcissist ever has a happy ending. It just never works out that way. Well, as for the victims, well, I've had plenty of testimonials for my coaching services, and I've received so many emails from survivors who have moved on, and either they're happy alone and they feel much healthier now, or eventually they got into a new relationship, they found someone who's not narcissistic. Because this is just typically how it goes for us. It gets better. Remember, you only got involved with this narcissist because you were manipulated. You were deceived. That wasn't what you were looking for. You were looking for something good, something healthy. And now that you have this awareness, there's no need for you to be manipulated again. And I'm sure many of them, they know that. They know that you weren't looking for anything like them. You were looking for something better, something healthier, something real. And that's why they become so paranoid, so worried, so concerned, and they just can't leave things alone. They're stalking and harassing you, running smear campaigns, because they know you were never looking for that. They manipulated you, they deceived you, and then they trauma bonded you. And that's why once you start to lift the trauma bond, they start to get very worried about you moving on, because they know what you're going to be moving on to. They know you're going to be moving on to something far better without them. They know that you're going to be returning to your natural state of health and happiness like you were in before you met them. And they know that eventually you're going to be looking for what you were looking for before you got involved with them. Because deep down they know that they're not real. They know that they're full of BS. They know that they manipulated you, they trauma bonded you. They know all of that. So they know that once you figure them out, they know that you're going to be going in a different direction away from them. You're going to be moving towards something healthier and happier, something genuine, rather than a scam. And they are terrified about that, because that's only going to expose them. It's just going to make them feel bad about themselves because they know that they're fake, they're not genuine. Nala decided to jump on my lap here. She loves it when I start talking. But yeah, this is just the reality of it. This isn't just some video to feed people's egos and make them feel better about themselves. That's not what this is about. I'm all about the truth. And honestly, if it was the case where they move on, things get better for them, and they're so much happier without you, and they just never needed you, if that was how things actually go, then I would just say that. But I can't say that because that's not the truth. Yeah, they may find something initially. They become very delusional about it. They act like they have something. They look for you in someone else. And that's what they were doing with you. And it didn't last for long. Essentially, it was the same thing as taking a drug. And then it wore off. And then their self-hatred and shame began to resurface, which they then took out on you. So that's really what happens. That's what happens every time. And it just never gets better for them. Because they never look within, they never see that they were the problem. They never take accountability. But that's what we do. We take accountability, we accept that, yeah, we got tricked, we were deceived. And if anything, we did too much for them. We gave too much. We should have had stronger boundaries. So that's what we have to take accountability for. So that we don't get used and abused like that again. But as for them, they're never going to look within. They're never going to accept that they manipulated and exploited us. They used and abused us just to try and fulfill these insatiable needs that they have. They're never going to look at it that way. And that's how you know that they're never going to change. They're just going to do the same thing again. They're just going to go around manipulating and exploiting people. using them, while they're pretending to be something they're not, and then turning against them, devaluing them, they're never going to have anything genuine or real. They're never going to have that with anyone. They're never going to be happy. They're never going to be satisfied with anyone they get involved with, because they have no self. They're disconnected from themselves. And that's where they need us. That's where they need sources of narcissistic supply. As for us, all we needed was ourselves. We were manipulated, and then in that moment, it caused us to disconnect from ourselves and to connect to this false persona, this false reality. So then we lost ourselves in that process, especially when we were being devalued. And that's how they then managed to take advantage of us. Because when we're disconnected from ourselves, we have no boundaries, we just go along with anything. So that was our problem. And we just need to connect back to ourselves. When we do that, everything will be fine. Everything will be good. But they're never going to do that. They're never going to connect back to themselves. They're always going to be that way. They need something to connect to outside of themselves, but something that is also disconnected from itself. They need someone successful and attractive who's also loyal, loving, empathic, and compassionate. They need someone like that to have no boundaries and disconnect from themselves. The problem is they're never going to find that again. And even if they did manage to find another empath, they're not going to be able to get them to be the way that they would like. They're not going to be able to mold them in that way. And that's how they're just never going to move on from you. And they never even really try to move on from you. They never close the chapter. They never give you any closure. They never accept the truth about what actually happened. They never take accountability. And so they never move on. They remain stuck. And they're always going to be stuck. They're always going to be disconnected from themselves. And they're just never going to be happy. They're going to spend the rest of their lives longing and yearning for you. And they're going to see that you're much happier and healthier without them. They're going to see that you're moving on. They're going to feel your energy slipping away from them. And they're going to feel that they've lost something. And that's why you do need to be very careful. Because when they see you growing, becoming stronger, healthier, happier, you're moving on without them. And they're still stuck, they're still miserable. They can't replace you. That's when you will see, oh yeah, they're not the same without you. They will never be the same without you. Because just look at the things that they do when they are without you. And that tells you everything you need to know. Because if they were fine without you, then they would be fine without you. If they were fine without you, then they could accept what went on, what went wrong, the things that they did to you. If they were fine, they could take accountability. If they were fine with themselves. And then there wouldn't be all of these crazy, irrational decisions or behaviors after losing you. We see these narcissists getting drunk every day, using drugs, searching for new sources of supply, doing anything they can to distract themselves from the fact that they are not doing well. They do not feel good inside. And I know you may not feel too good as well after dealing with them, but that will fade away with time. You just have to connect back to yourself, rebuild your character and authenticity. You just have to do what you can never do around them, because they have no self, so they're not comfortable with your identity. And again, that tells you everything you need to know. Person's not comfortable with your identity, your sense of self, even though it was nothing abusive, nothing harmful to them. They couldn't tolerate that. It just reveals how empty they feel inside. That's all that it shows. And we see this all the time. These types of people, what do? When you break up with them or they break up with you, they get drunk every night, they go to clubs, they sleep around, they do anything they can to distract themselves. Because the last thing that they want to do is to go within. They will do anything just to disconnect, just to distract from themselves. Because there's nothing good inside of them. And this is why they're always trying to extract supply from you. Because unlike them, you're not corrupt, you're not contaminated. So they get this goodness out of you. And then they put it into them. That's just it. When you spend a lot of time alone, when you go into monk mode, when you reflect on yourself, you attend to these weeds in your mind, in your heart, in your soul. And then you can pull those weeds out. You start to feel so much better. You start to feel pure, authentic. You start to feel so clean inside, so light, when before you felt so heavy, so dense. And that's really what they wanted from you. They wanted some of that. Because they couldn't get that from within. They don't have that goodness inside of themselves. They're corrupt, they're contaminated. And that's why they want to extract the goodness out of you. That's what their supply is. And they're not going to be able to find that in someone else. Because a lot of people in this world are toxic, narcissistic. And even if they're not, they might just find someone who's going through something, and they're not going to be able to nurture them back to health. If they could do that, they would have done that with you. But even if they did find someone pure, all they would do is contaminate it. It's not going to be anything good after they've gotten involved with it. They contaminate everything that they get around. They can't sustain it. And this is why you never see anyone, anything around a narcissist, anything that's been around them for a long enough amount of time, it never retains its health, its purity, its authenticity. It never does. It just dies. And even us, that's how it felt to be around them, isn't it? When we were around these narcissists, how did we feel? We felt dead inside. I know I did. I felt like a zombie. I felt like I had no life, no energy inside of me. Because that's how they feel inside. And so they're extracting all of this out of you, all of your life, energy, and vitality. And that's how anything they get around, doesn't matter who it is, eventually they will destroy it. They will suck the life out of it. But it will end up being just the same as them. And it's because of how they are on the inside. There's just nothing good inside of them. They're contaminated. Well, as for myself, I'm so grateful that I have the ability to self-reflect, to take accountability, to pull these weeds out of my mind, these things that contaminate me. I have the ability to heal. And that's how, as a chosen one, I do have this healing power. I have this ability to heal people. And honestly, I've seen it so many times. When people get involved with me, they get close to me, they feel a lot happier. Some people do become quite possessive and controlling, but that's only because they wanted more from me. Maybe they weren't satisfied, they just couldn't get enough. But yeah, I've always noticed that about myself. I've always had this healing power, where it's like anything around me just seems to grow. It just seems to get better. I just seem to give it life. And I've had some long-term relationships, and in each one, every girl who spent a long enough amount of time around me, they got better. Things got better for them. It was only after they left, and it did take quite a few months after they left me, until things started to go down. And I see the same thing every time. As long as people are near me, close to me, and listening to me, they seem to do fine. And of course, I've seen that in my cat, Nala. She is a very happy, healthy cat. I've had a 7-year relationship with Nala since before the channel. She did have a urinary infection. It's the first time that she's ever had that. But I think it was just the way that she was using her litter tray. So I took her to the vet, got her some medication, and now she's doing fine. She has no problems. And she really hasn't changed at all since when I first had her. When she was 8 weeks old, only she was very shy back then, afraid of people. She didn't really like to go outside. But now she's a lot more active, more friendlier. She can get comfortable around new people very quickly. And also she used to hate other cats. But then I got her to go out more. And she's made friends with a few cats over the past few years. Yeah, I've just noticed that about myself. As a chosen one, I do have this very special healing power. And of course, I work. I'm sure I've healed so many people through my videos. I mean, of course, it's not just the videos that help people to heal, but they can act as an aid to it. And I can't imagine how many toxic relationships I've helped to end. How many suicides I've prevented. How many people I've helped to get promoted at their jobs or to start a business. Who even knows? I mean, this channel has over 50 million views. And I do my best in every video to inspire you, to motivate you, to become the best version of yourself. So, that's just an example for you of the power that I have to heal people as a chosen one. And I'm sure many of you will recognize this in yourself. You will see it. How when the narcissist was with you initially, and they were going along with you, they were listening to you, everything was great. They were doing well. They were doing fine. They had no problems. But then they started to feel insecure, and then they had to have the control, and then everything just blew up in their face. Because that's just it. People like that should never be in a position of power. People who are dead inside, they're contaminated. I mean, as I spoke about in my live video yesterday, before I started the YouTube channel, about 1 year before, I was very depressed and I even attempted suicide. And then I went through a long process of healing myself to some degree. I did a lot of meditation and mindfulness, exercise. I took some medication for my anxiety as well. I did a lot of self-reflection. And then I did a lot of research on this disorder. So then I just built myself back up. I replenished myself. Until then I was ready to share my energy, my vibrations with the world through my videos. And that's why, even when I look back at this point, now over 6 years in, I'm still very proud of my work earlier on. Some of my first videos, when I look back and I watch them, I'm proud of the things that I said back then. And I think my energy was pretty good, it was on point. But these narcissists, they're never going to do that. Toxic people. They're not going to go within, they're not going to self-reflect. They're not going to do what we're doing right now. Talking about these things. Reflect on what has happened. Taking accountability. Talking about moving forward. They're not going to go through this process. And that's why they targeted us, because we were just a distraction. We helped to distract them from themselves. It was a form of escapism. And that's how, when you were dealing with them, it just felt so empty. Because there was no connection. They trained you to disconnect from yourself. And they were, of course, disconnected from themselves. And that's just it. When you're around a toxic person or a narcissist, and you're both disconnected from yourselves, they're the ones who are going to win. They're the only ones who are going to get something out of it. Because they're comfortable with that. That's how they've been living their entire lives. Well, as for us, we just miss ourselves. We want ourselves back. So what they miss, and why they'll never be fine without you, the same without you, it's because of all of your wonderful qualities, your empathic abilities, your supply, that of how they got you to disconnect from yourself for them. Not sure what that noise was. I don't know if you could hear that. Yeah, they got you to disconnect from yourself for them. Doesn't look like anything's happening out here. Yeah, but that's what they thrive in, is just anything, any tool that they can use to disconnect from themselves. Well, for us, it's just very uncomfortable. When we're being manipulated, when we're being deceived, devalued, triangulated, or they're ghosting us, giving us the silent treatment, discarding us, even smearing us. We feel very uncomfortable in all of that because it just disconnects, separates us from ourselves. But for them, it's a very comfortable experience. They thrive in that. And it's because it helps them to remain disconnected from themselves. Which of course is what they want, because there's nothing good inside of them. It's toxic. And this is just what all toxic people do. Because they don't want anything to do with themselves. They don't want anything to do with what's inside of them. Well, for us, that's all that we want, and we want to share it with someone. All they want to share with you is their toxicity, because that's all that they've got to give, and they want to extract a potent supply from you. But that's how they will never be the same without you. Because you were that tool, you were that supply. You were that object, that appliance that made them feel better about themselves, because it helped to disconnect them from themselves. But as for you, you just wanted a connection, a genuine relationship, and you didn't get that. You didn't get what you wanted. They didn't give you anything other than manipulation, lies, future faking, abuse. So you're not going to be missing out on anything. You're going to be far better off without them once you break that trauma bond. How's everyone doing in the live chat? Anyone got any questions on what I've said to you? You will always be better off without them. As long as you self-reflect, as long as you heal. But as for them, they will never be the same without you. Just remember all of the work they put in to manipulate you, to future fake, to give you the silent treatment, to ghost you. That took a lot of work, a lot of effort. And they were very dependent on that supply. So what do they do when it's gone? Then they're missing it, then they're lost. Then all those things that would make them feel good by them doing that, now there's nothing there to make them feel good anymore. Cold Potato says 100%, never go back. Yeah, it's no good going back, because if you go back, it's not going to be any different. They're never going to change. They're never going to self-reflect. They're never going to want anything to do with themselves. So if you go back, all that can happen is that they're going to have to make you disconnect from yourself, so that you will provide all of your goodness inside to them. Daria Hardaway says, never get upset for not getting something. Yeah, they'll train you to be that way, where they withhold from you, or they lie to you and future fake you because they never got what they wanted in their childhood. They never got their parents' validation, approval, a vision of love, acceptance. They never got any of that. And so they just play out this trauma from their childhood for the rest of their lives. And that's why they act that way. When they don't give something to you, or they withhold something from you, it should just reveal to you that this person was neglected in their childhood. They were abused. They were traumatized. And now they just want to be on the other end of it. They want to use that trauma to control you. Tone Instrumental says, learn to always love yourself before anyone. That's it, very great advice. See, the narcissist wants you to put them on a pedestal. They want you to love them first, which means automatically you have to disconnect from yourself. And that's why psychologist Rosenberg, he says that our greatest defense against narcissists is our self-love. Ramani says, you're happier without a narcissist around you. You're more relaxed and at peace. That's it, and that's how you know that despite what they may say to you or call you, it's how you know that you're not the narcissist. Because you're more at peace when you're alone. Unlike them, you don't thrive in chaos and drama. So they're the ones who create the problem. They're the ones who cause the drama and chaos. And we're just trying to get away from it. Because of course, we're not the ones with this mental illness, this personality disorder. Malignant narcissist says, I believe they were little turds as kids, difficult and stubborn, hard to raise, not narcissists due to abuse. And that's the thing, because if you have children, I mean, you can train them from a young age to behave in certain ways, to behave appropriately. You can discipline them. I mean, it's just a small child. Well, what are they going to do? So this reveals that they were not disciplined, or their emotions were neglected, invalidated at a very young age. It's always going to be the parent's fault, other than with psychopathy, because then it is genetic, which means that there could be a psychopath who might actually be a nice person. They might not be violent at all, because not all psychopaths are like that. But then unfortunately they might have a child who could inherit this condition, and it could be activated in them. Of course, that is very rare, but it can happen. Aaron Michaels says sometimes kids being spoiled makes them narcs. Yeah, spoiling a child can turn them into a narcissist. But then spoiling is also a form of abuse. KTU, Baby Guess Winston says no contact drives them insane. No show without an audience. Peace is my ultimate goal. Yeah, that's it. Everything they do is for attention. It's all just a show. And they want you to be on the same wavelength, the same frequency. But if you're not, if you're using the grey rock, observe, don't absorb, and they get very angry, and they may even ramp it up, because they will do anything to get their supply, to get your attention. Fulmer Family Royalty says, I appreciate your words. You're in Cleveland, Ohio. I think we've got people from all over the world in here. I'm actually in Malaysia at the moment. As many of you may know, I am from Wales in the United Kingdom. Hi Fly G123 says, I remember being two people at once. One person for the narc and another for myself. Yes, because the narcissist is split off from their true self. They engage in splitting, where you may see this Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So then they also train you to be that way as well. They train you to have this duplicity, because they have that in a way where they're two-faced. But we're not that way. It's just they impose a false character onto us to go along with their agenda. And we just have to unlearn it. We have to get to know ourselves again and just learn ourselves, get to know what we like, what we're interested in, and dissociate from them. Because that's just it. I mean, they never appreciated who we really are. It was just all about what we could be for them. They're really that selfish. But yeah, just know they will never be the same without you. I can assure you of that. It will affect them. Just remember how much work they put in to manipulate you. all of that effort, everything they did to keep you under control, all of these crazy tactics, devaluation, triangulation, ghosting, silent treatment, future faking, smear campaigns, and they didn't do all of that for nothing. They did that to manipulate and control you. So of course they're not going to be good without you gone. And you will be fine without them. Initially you may feel like you need them. You may be craving their attention because you're still trauma bonded. But just remember, you were manipulated, you were deceived, you were future faked. Look at who you were and what you had before you got involved with them. You were so much better back then. They just drained the life out of you. They gave you nothing in return. You got nothing of value from them. All you got was abuse and manipulation. But they got a whole lot from you. So they were dependent on you. They needed you far more than you needed them. And that's why it's going to be a lot more difficult for them to move on. Especially since they don't take accountability. We do. They don't self-reflect. We do. They don't even care about healing. But we do. So when we separate, when we go our separate ways, well, we're the ones who are going to win. We're the ones who are going to be better off without them. They're the ones who will never be the same without us. Well, that's why, of course, in their cycle of abuse, it does involve hoovering. They typically try to hoover us back in. And if we don't accept it, they stalk and harass us. Because everything I'm saying is true. They will never be the same without us. They were heavily dependent on us. They needed us. We never needed them. So that's it for this video. Live from the Highlands in Malaysia. Give it a thumbs up down below if you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Hit subscribe and click all notifications so that you will be notified when I go live again. Donations are greatly appreciated, no matter how small. You can donate by going to my PayPal. It's paypal.me/Narc Survivor. You can book a one-on-one coaching session with me by going to my website, which is narcsurvivor.co.uk. And follow me on Instagram. You can see my trip last year to Taiwan. And soon I will be uploading my trip from Japan as well. So follow me on Instagram. It is Narc Survivor YouTube. Alright, thank you all for joining me on another Chosen Ones live video. Live from the Highlands in Malaysia.